So it's making the rounds, at least in UFO circles, that J.D. Vance was on, what was it, the Benny Show? I guess it's a pretty well-known political show. It talks about all kinds of things political, I guess. But anyway, I'm not super familiar with it. But yeah, everyone's talking about how he had a discussion about UFOs. And it's only like a 4-minute conversation, maybe not even that much. It was kind of short. And he shared his opinion on there about UFOs being demons, and everyone's talking about it. And yet, if you take that entire conversation, that 3 or 4 minute conversation, I feel like there's more things that we can be talked about, but it's kind of low hanging fruit. Oh, he said demons, and it gives non-Christians the opportunity to kind of bash that and make fun of it and stuff like that. And that's what you see. And this guy right here, Vetted, or Patrick from Vetted, he's talking about it. I want to play the clip. There's just a very small clip of like that entire 4-minute interview, and I'll talk about it on the other side.
I don't think they're aliens. I think they're demons anyway, but that's a longer discussion.
Well, I can't let you go without a follow-up on that. So you think they're demons?
Well, look, I think that celestial beings who fly around, who do weird things to people, I think that the desire to describe everything celestial, everything as otherworldly, to describe it as aliens. I mean, every great world religion, including Christianity, the one that I believe in, has understood that there are weird things out there, and there are things that are very difficult to explain. And I naturally go, when I hear about sort of extra natural phenomenon, that's where I go to, is the Christian understanding that there's a lot of good out there, but there's also some evil out there. And I think that one of the devil's great tricks is to convince people he never existed.
So he does make some good points there, especially at the end. I think most of us as Christians would agree with something like that. But at the end of the day, it's just a man's opinion. I find it kind of weird that we make a lot of video content. I mean, yeah, we know it's going to get the views. People are going to be suckered into that, especially those who are willing to bash the concept that aliens are demons. You see that in the comments, like all over the place. It's just weird to talk about someone's opinion. And there's an entire conversation's worth, a vice president talking about aliens, and we only focus on just the one thing. I feel like, there wasn't that much substance to the rest of the conversation, but I feel like you could have at least talked about one or two other things. Now, in my mind, I'm kind of struggling, was this a net positive for the Christian community that this discussion was had, and now that people are talking about it, I'm sure Christian circles, some people are going to talk about it, or is it a net negative? Because of, everyone's just going to come at us and bash us and whatever. It's just a person's opinion. That's what the world does, whatever. You can expect that. But it does, to me, at least highlight, not really so much this conversation, but future conversations, because this happened. We need to have an appropriate response when people start asking us, or when we comment our opinions on, some Christian Facebook page about what was said here. So many people don't know how to talk about this as Christians. And I think it's in large part because we don't know how to communicate this issue. We don't understand it. We're ignorant. Most Christians, anyway, don't even follow up on this news. They're just burying their heads in the sand. I'm not saying you have to spend hours and hours on it, but at least read a headline. I've been complaining about that for a long time. Christians take two radical views, I think, on this subject. They are either completely ignorant, or on the other side, I would even argue they're still probably ignorant, but also, it must be end times. Therefore, we need to look at this from the end times view and nothing else. And, Project Bluebeam, or end times, end times, end times. And that's like, they all say the same thing. And there's no understanding of the facts or what's going on. No understanding that we need to expose darkness. We need to, potentially deal with issues of, false religions being born out of this. I always bring up the example of Mormonism. What were Christians doing back then that allowed Mormonism to be the cancer that it is today? Could we have done more? Yes, God is sovereign in all things, and, whatever happens, happens. But, with his, I don't know the correct word to use on it right now. That's what happens when I do things off the cuff. But, God understood that was going to happen. He allowed it to happen. But at the same time, Christians have a responsibility to expose darkness. And we don't have to put this in the category of, it's end times, end times, end times. Therefore, whatever, just who cares, let's just focus on Iran and what's going on over there, because that's a whole other discussion I've had with people. But anyway, this is a topic that the church has to engage with, because it is the great battle of our day. I think that's just maybe my opinion, but something obviously is being led to. This is all leading up to something. But anyway, I want to share my comments real quick, not because I think my comments are so awesome, but just because how things go when I do things off the cuff. But I say it's disappointing that everyone is making content based on him saying it's demons, and yet there's probably at least 2 other things people can comment on regarding his short discussion, but everyone focuses on his opinion, which is an opinion. But that's what drives the views, because everyone's got to be in a huff about someone's opinion. And yeah, you can see I like my own comment, not because again I think my comment's great, but algorithms, I want people to see this. Now, as a Christian like myself, I will say that I think it's important for Christians to actually talk about this rather than ignore it, which is what I'm finding is happening. But we need to have more nuanced discussions rather than just pulling out the demon card. It could be it very well could be demonic, or at least some of it. But let's have that nuance. But most of all, let's admit that we don't have the full picture. Nobody does. I'm sick and tired of people acting as if they know for sure what the phenomenon is, or that it's this or that. Yes, there are elements that are definitely appearing spiritual, especially when you get into the messaging from these beings, and that's something that we as Christians need to be aware of. But let's admit that we don't know everything. And then last one here, but seriously, it's just I meant to say low-hanging. It's just a low-hanging fruit to report on his opinion about demons. Why spend so much time about what one person says when they are just as much informed as any of us are, most likely? Yes, it's possible he might be a little bit more, or he might know more than us, a little bit at least, and he's just playing coy, and that's if you saw the rest of the interview. But most likely they ain't telling him squat. I think the bigger story, if you want to report on this short conversation, which honestly really wasn't that much, is that does he really think that he's just going to be able to waltz in there and get all the UFO data that he wants? That's the kind of the funny part. Like, he's talking about how he's got three more years left. This is an obsession of his. He's like, oh yeah, if you think you're obsessed with this, I'm more. He kind of says it in a fun way. But like, seriously though, does he think that he's just going to, as vice president, even though we in the UFO community know that this information isn't given to presidents willy-nilly, if it ever is at all. But as vice president, they're just going to drop the information on him because he wants it. Like, oh yeah, I'm JD Vance. Hey, no vice president's ever asked for this information before. No, I'll just go get it. I'll just walk over there. I'm busy right now, but when I'm not busy, I'll just go do that. If anything, that should be the story. That's the bigger story right there. But anyway, I do continue on. I also wish the interviewer asked him about the website. You can see he was starting to at one point. I hate that happens a lot in interviews. When a discussion is started to be brought up, that would be very great to learn more about, and then it gets interrupted in the natural flow of a conversation but never brought back to. I don't know if he knows more about the website, and that's what happened in the interview. He's about to talk about the Benny guy, whatever. He's asking about the website, but then he gets kind of cut off because it's just a natural flow conversation. That makes sense. I'm not, bashing anyone for that, but it's never brought back up. So I don't know if JD Vance knows more about the website, but it would be great to have him comment on it. It's like the blunder with the Obama interview. Why don't you ask more follow-up questions? Most of it is just his opinion and that he hasn't seen anything yet or has just been busy. Yawn. Get information of substance. And that was kind of my complaint about this interview. I mean, it's a fine interview. I'm not sure what else they talked about. I didn't watch the show. Not really sure who Benny is, but they had this like 4-minute exchange about UFOs, maybe less than that. Ask more questions though. There wasn't too much asked about, with substance in there. I mean, just think, we haven't had much of an official word on what the website is going to be about. Like, very, very little information. You have the vice president sitting right next to you. Ask him about that. You were about to. Why didn't you go back to that? You could have been the first person to get information about that website. And it would have been truly great for all of us. But kind of dropped the ball on that one. But again, everyone's focused on the demon aspect of the conversation, which didn't come into like the last quarter of the 3 or 4 minutes that they were talking about this. But yeah, again, so people, in Christian communities are going to start talking about this. It's going to be brought up in all the Facebook pages and, YouTube videos and whatnot. So just my hope for the church is that we can have a more nuanced conversation rather than, oh, it's end times or Project Bluebeam, and drop it at that. Not understanding that this is a very complex topic. Yes, there is definitely spiritual elements to it, and we need to start working on our language and how we're going to discuss this. Man, I wish pastors would cover this, or other leaders in the church, with an understanding of it, because when they do talk about it, Wretched Radio, it's just embarrassing. But yeah, so just be prepared. It's, these discussions are going to start happening, probably already happening, and yeah, we just need to work on a good response. But again, commenting about an opinion, we can do better than that. Yeah, you can see some of the comments right here. He probably also believes the earth is only 6,000 years old. And some other things. Yeah, this one right here. Demons do not need craft to move from place to place. Yeah, and what do we do with that as Christians? Also, demons wouldn't die from crashes since they are spirits. I have an answer for that, or at least the beginnings of an answer, which is why we need to have these discussions and work off of one another. But what do we as Christians do with that information? And yeah, there's a lot of hatred. And this is nothing. I've been following some other comments sections on this very part of the interview that's been shared elsewhere. Now, I'm not saying that, had he given a better response, and I'm not really complaining about his response, honestly. Like, truly, I'm really not. I mean, no matter what the response is, if, as Christians, this is what we're going to be looked down upon, or we're going to be looked down upon no matter what, but, just be aware. But I do think we need to be more nuanced in our conversation. Anyway, what do you guys think?